I'm going to keep my shirt on, John. Is that okay?
That's okay. I'll let you slide this time. Are you seeking a Carolina Chris on the pay-per-view broadcast, or does that stay at the weigh-ins?
I'm going to say Carolina Chris just because I know it pisses off Ray Longo to such an extent. But Chris, this is his doing. If you follow Chris Weidman on Instagram, started tagging all his posts Carolina Chris. You know, and any chance us Boston guys get to sort of cut down a New Yorker, we're going to do it. How quickly these guys lose sight of their roots. The All-American New Yorker Chris Weidman is now Carolina Chris.
Nice. Talk to me from a broadcast perspective. Fans back in the building, right? I mean, this is a historical moment. Yeah, I was going to ask. I mean, does it mean something to you?
It means a lot, you know, and I am very appreciative for every single person who put money down to come to this show. And I've said repeatedly, John, you've heard me say, it's not a crutch for us as broadcasters. When we have a headset on, you've done play-by-play, you know, you're pretty much in your tunnel. You're not so much worried about extracurricular noise and things like that. But certainly when you're calling title fights, especially, you want the backdrop of a crowd. I think back to Jan Blachowicz last September. Had he won that championship in Poland or even in Las Vegas, what that moment would have been. And now you have this soundtrack of 18 months of UFC history where there are no fans. So goddamn right, I can't wait to have the fans behind me, and I'm going to lean on them, and I'm going to lay out and let their voices be heard. So I'm excited.
And I wonder, I mean, I don't know if you can tell us, but from a production side, does that mean you guys are all back together at one table as a team? So does that part excite you?
I don't know if that qualifies as breaking news, but I think that's the most exciting thing for me is, you know, to be able to have my broadcast partners right there. If I need to get a promo in, I can actually touch Joe Rogan's arm instead of having to rely on the truck to cut their mics or get them to lay out. So logistically, it helps. And for me, selfishly, when I do my pay-per-view open and I am looking into a camera and addressing millions of people, I want to be standing up, fired up, you know, jumping out of my suit. And I've been forced to sit down for those moments, and I prefer to stand up. So, yes, we will all be together kissing and sharing germs, and I can't wait.
Kind of a weird question, but you touched on it with Joe Rogan there. I've seen a lot of people during this time say, you know, he's kind of backed away a little bit and relocated. That's the thing. Like, what happens when he calls it quits? So I'm curious from your perspective, like, how much do you think it changed the product when he calls it quits?
It feels much bigger when he's there. There's no doubt about it. He brings a special dynamic to our broadcast booth that I'm not really sure anybody else can bring. There are a lot of these guys that are comedic, you know, and are super funny, but he is the total package. There's no doubt about it. I think he's going to outlast me, though. You know, there are rumblings, oh, Rogan's got one foot out the door. He's doing our domestic pay-per-views right now. He hasn't traveled internationally as long as I've been doing the pay-per-views, but I don't think he's going anywhere. I mean, that's not informed speculation, but I wouldn't be surprised if he outlasts me, to be honest with you.
Nice. All right, 261, 3 title fights, 6 incredible athletes. One of them gets you more excited over the other out of the 3 fights?
Well, I would use my mic time to probably talk about Jessica Andrade and Valentina Shevchenko because that seems to be the fight that nobody is talking about. And I think Andrade is acutely aware of what she is up against technically. She understands that she has disadvantages in this fight. But she's getting this opportunity because she's not just one of the most decorated women in UFC history. She brings the fight. Like, you know she's going to entertain. Like, you can put her on pay-per-view and you know she is going to entertain the masses. So I think Andrade is really going to go for it. She seems to think that she has some things that Valentina hasn't seen before. So maybe I'm in the minority, you know, when I say that fight jumps off the card for me. But I think it's more competitive than the betting line suggests.
Another storyline that's under the radar, and understandably so, but these Chinese athletes that are debuting on the card. I'm just curious, like, what you can say. I don't know how much research you've been able to do about the program, about them, but it's pretty interesting, right, that we've got these Chinese newcomers. Yeah,
I got to talk to the head MMA coach, Dean Amasinger, as many of you guys know, used to corner Ross Pearson, and just as an incredible MMA mind, it's insane what is going on in China. Like, when we look back in 15 to 20 years at this UFC initiative, I think we're going to be overwhelmed with just how successful it was. But yeah, I mean, I can talk about all the athletes right now. I mean, Rong Zhu is an absolute phenom. Ori Qileng, just an intense fighter. I mean, they're all here without their head coaches, which is a little bit tricky, right? None of their coaches were able to get visas. So a lot of these fighters are in the United States for the first time. There is a definite culture shock. And by the way, their head coaches aren't here. But these 3 athletes are certainly richly deserving of this opportunity. And Liang Na as well, you know, a really exciting fighter, more of a grappler than a totally well-rounded fighter at this point in time. But they all have winnable fights, I think, in front of them. And this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to China.
Yeah. Last thing from you, John. You know, you always do your research, talking to everybody. Are there any other stories? I mean, obviously the stories here are the 3 title fights, fans back in the building, but are there any personal stories or fight matchups or anything on the undercard that you unearthed that people need to be paying attention to?
Well, I think Tristan Boondock Connolly is an interesting story. A lot of people remember his UFC debut in 2019 up 2 weight classes at welterweight, and he beat Michel Pereira, but he had a very invasive neck surgery. He's been out a long time. And he's only had 2 pro fights at featherweight, so really plied his trade as a lightweight, but you saw him on the scale today, absolutely shredded at 145 pounds, and fighting a guy in Pat Sabatini who is all the rage out of Philadelphia. So that's a fight that I don't think a lot of people are talking about that kind of piques my interest. Thank you, bro. Yes, sir.
The last few times Kamaru Usman's fought, we've spoken about how eventually he's going to get to that level where he's just going to be a massive betting favorite all the time. Minus 400 right now against Jorge Masvidal. Do you think that's odds makers kind of giving him credit for his skills, or this is a rematch that he already won the first fight?
Yeah, I think it's more to the latter. And again, we talk about the odds makers trying to draw 2-way action. The betting line hasn't moved all that much, so it seems as though at this point they are getting action on both fighters. You know, I think I see some value probably on Masvidal at plus 300 just because of how confident his coaches are in the skill stuff from that first fight, even though they didn't have a great cardiovascular base from which to work off of. I think they were encouraged, and that maybe encourages me a little bit. But hey, man, I mean, we talk about this stuff all the time. It's like Kamaru Usman, if you have bet on this guy, you've cashed every goddamn ticket. So don't overthink it, right? If you have the resources to lay minus 400, might as well take the plunge.
And then looking at the Valentina fight, like her last fight, she was like minus 1,800. Before that, minus 1,100. Now she's only like minus 500. This is like the closest she's been in a while. Do you think that's because the last fight there were some moments that Jennifer Maia shined? Do you think it's because Valentina has shown that she's not unbeatable, or is that just they're giving Jessica Andrade the respect she deserves?
I think it's twofold. I think there is some residual effect from the Jennifer Maia fight, even though I'm not sure how much stock people should be putting into little instances in that fight. But I think this is about Jessica Andrade and what she has accomplished. You know, full disclosure, I thought she beat Rose Namajunas in the rematch, you know. Rose was bloodied and battered after that fight. So Andrade is world class, and she's so smart. You can't see how smart she is because she doesn't speak English. But when she speaks Brazilian, I mean, she is an unbelievable MMA mind. And yeah, I think that I see value on that side, but Valentina, man, is just a straight killer. And her appetite for just like overall well-roundedness as an athlete and a human being is like nothing I've ever seen before. But I just think fighting a former champion, expect the line to be a little bit closer.
And then finally, Uriah Hall's looked better than ever his last few fights. This is a rematch that he said he's wanted for a while. Chris Weidman's probably at a different part of his career. Chris Weidman's the betting favorite, though, in this fight. So what do you make of those ones?
Well, it's funny. When we did our podcast on Monday, Uriah Hall was favored. So it's pretty close, and you're breaking news to me that Weidman is now the favorite. A lot of the sharps and the handicappers out there have been talking about Weidman and the wrestling advantage. And obviously, if you guys have seen him this week, you know he's at the height of motivation, has really been buoyed by the new training partners. And just he called, you know, his new life like Pleasantville in South Carolina. So I think one thing working against Uriah Hall is that he is fighting a Chris Weidman who is at the height of motivation again. But I'm very excited to see what Uriah Hall can do with this. I mean, he understands that if he can't keep this fight upright, it's going to be a long night. But yeah, pick 'em fight essentially for me, and I'm glad I don't have to pick a winner.
Hey, John, right here. So, John, I think you remember there's a lot of you, even though it's mostly your voice, the cameras do watch you, and it produces things like that iconic shot, you, DC, and Rogan reacting to the knockout. Knowing that the camera is on, when there's a big finish, are you aware that, like, oh, this might end up going viral when you react?
I know that they're only going to my camera if they don't have anything good from Rogan or DC. You know, now that we're all together, maybe you'll have some of those group shots again, but not even thinking about it, man. You know, super embarrassing for my family and my wife when they run those things back. I look like a complete fucking asshole. Sorry. But no, I'm not thinking about that. I mean, there's so much going on, as you guys know, with this broadcast, 8 hours on a headset, constant communication with the truck. Half the time I'm calling a fight, I'm sitting on a promo card trying to get that in. So last thing I'm thinking about in a big moment is that it might be reproduced on camera. But I don't know. Maybe I'll think about it tomorrow night now that you got me thinking about it. But no.
I know we got a big card tomorrow, but coming up next month, the return of Nate Diaz. You have the iconic 209 tattoo. I was just wondering, what are your thoughts on him coming back?
I love the Diaz brothers. You know, Nick Diaz was the guy that really got me into mixed martial arts as a fan, and I just love it. I absolutely love it. As I've said repeatedly, Nate is only going to fight the guys that he believes are deserving of that platform and that showcase. You know, Nate knows that he represents one of the biggest fights in the sport for anybody that he's going to fight, and Leon Edwards obviously qualifies and has a ton of momentum. You know, I think it's going to be a tall task for Nate with the layoff to come in and beat a guy like Leon Edwards, who is just streaking like hell at 170 pounds. But, dude, there's nothing like having a Diaz brother on the card. Can't wait.
My final question, and this is a little more particular, but obviously Rose had some comments, you know, about Weili leading up to it, and this is part of the fight. This is part of the story going in. It's a hot button topic, so how do you address, you know, that part of the story when you guys talk about the fight on the broadcast?
So I don't plan my walkout necessarily, right? And there are a lot of different things that go into the broadcast. We might have a sideline report that takes the walk. You know, I don't know how long Joe or DC are going to go. And trying to get into something like that once the fight starts is almost impossible. And there's so much good juice that doesn't have to do with that, that it's not necessarily at the forefront of my mind as to something that I need to get in there. I do think, as someone who has Lithuanian blood myself, that Rose Namajunas' passion about Lithuania and what her people have been through, that's the rub for me. I mean, that's what I would lean into more than anything, you know, controversial about her comments. And I think she stepped back a little bit from them here during fight week. So I probably didn't answer your question as directly as you would have liked, but for me, it's not at the forefront of my mind to try to find a way to force that into the broadcast.
Okay, thank you, John, and
Thank
have
you.
a good show.
Thank you, man. Good.
John, over here on your left.
Hi.
So obviously we're all excited to have the fans back, but will you miss hosting events without the crowd at all?
I don't think I will. You know, I think my higher profile celebrity broadcast partners are going to miss just some of the conveniences of going to the bathroom without being bothered and things like that. But no, there's no silver lining or upside for me to doing these fights without a crowd. The fans are the lifeblood of this sport. I'm not sure fans mean as much to any other sport as they do to us, and that's not promotional speak. I really believe that. So, no, I mean, I'll go back to the Apex when they call my number, but I want to call fights with fans, no doubt.
All right. And what's one fight that isn't scheduled right now that you'd love to see happen by the end of 2021?
Khamzat Chimaev versus Colby Covington.
Wow.
I mean, right? I mean, I just was so fascinated by the Chimaev-Leon Edwards fight just to see how Khamzat would handle someone like that. So I'm just dying to see if Chimaev can handle these truly elite fighters, because if there's any knock on him now, it's really only the strength of schedule. So Chimaev really against any of those top guys, but I'm hoping it's Covington.
And last one from me, John. As a fellow Patriots fan, I got to get
Yes.
your reaction to Julian Edelman's retirement.
What a stud, man. I mean, you talk about maximizing your utility. And I do hope that he gets to Canton in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I think he absolutely deserves it when you look at what he was able to accomplish in the postseason. And seemingly he's a better dude and a better teammate than he is a football player. So sorry to see him go, you know, not necessarily on his terms because of the health issues, but got a lot of rings and a Super Bowl MVP trophy and all-time great Patriot. Hopefully he gets to Canton.